Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of The Hunger Games 2: Catching Fire. Now, just so you know, I have a cold, and I tried filming this on Friday, and even though I was about to upload it, I felt I could have done better. I was pretty exhausted, and I felt that I was rambling in too many different areas, so hopefully this version will come out better. I'm still recovering though, so you'll probably be hearing plenty of disgusting noises due to how much my microphone picks up, so I apologize in advance for that. But let's move on to the movie. I was surprised at how uninterested I was in seeing this film, and I'm not sure why, because prior to its release it was getting great reviews. I think right now it has like an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, but prior to me going and seeing it, it was like in the 90s, so that was really impressive, but it still didn't increase my expectations very much. Prior to that was the trailers and the TV spots, and they all looked like the movie looked like it would be good based on them, so that wasn't an issue. Yet still, I wasn't getting any more excited in seeing it. And prior to that, obviously, was the first Hunger Games movie. Now, I have not read the books. I don't know how good they are, and I thought the first movie was good, but even then, after watching it, I can't say that I was too enthusiastic for a sequel. And that really made me reevaluate my feelings towards the first film. Was it as good as I said it was? I gave it a 3 out of 4 star. I respected it quite a bit. But for me just to be totally uninterested in them following up on this story, that really made me question what I had originally said. And I came to the conclusion that I liked The Hunger Games, but not necessarily enough for me to watch a second time. At least I won't pursue it in the immediate future. I only saw it when it first came out in theaters, and because I just felt that the story had very limited potential when being adapted into a movie format. When you think about it, the problem with the first film was that the first half, which was like an hour and a half, was all building up to the Hunger Games themselves. It was introducing us to the characters, to the world, the situation, whatever, and I felt that it took too long into getting to that. But then once it actually got to the Hunger Games, I felt that the movie kind of let itself down. You see, the first half might have been too long, it might have been too much buildup, but it also really was the best part of that film. I thought the world these characters existed in was very interesting. I loved the various set designs. I loved the use of color. I loved how there was not a single dull aspect, and even the costume design. So everything about it looked cool. Now you could argue that it's all window dressing, that it's more style over substance. I don't see that as a bad thing as long as the style continues to engage me. A good example of a movie succeeding based off of style over substance, in my opinion, is Avatar. The visuals were cool enough to carry the entire film, even if the story wasn't anything special. Whereas a bad example would probably be Alice in Wonderland, that movie that came out a few years ago. Very pretty to look at, but I eventually just kind of fell out of interest while watching it. But I think in itself there's nothing wrong with going with that approach, and I thought The Hunger Games did a solid job at really utilizing that. And then once they got to The Hunger Games themselves, I mean, it was still competently made, but still I felt like I was watching just a bigger budgeted version of Battle Royale or The Condemned or any other, force these people to kill each other for entertainment or whatever it was in Battle Royale. It was, I think, supposed to be for entertainment. I've seen that kind of story done many times before in different mediums. So really the film achieved its identity. What made it unique was its first half. And I felt that that was not something I wanted to see repeated, though. That if they made a sequel, it would probably have the exact same formula. First half, where they'd have a lot of fun showcasing this world and everything within it that would make the film stand out, but it would be just too much build-up. So when they finally get to what it's the payoff isn't as good, and even though it's a solid flick, it's just kind of underwhelming in comparison, because I've seen this story done many times before, including the previous film. So I just thought if I'm sure if I read the book, I'd feel differently. That the book probably does manage to combine both halves to just create the ultimate enjoyable experience. I'm sure the Hunger Games and the novels were much more interesting than how they appeared in the film. I could be wrong, I don't know, but it's a difficult film to translate because either you have to cut out so much of the first half and focus on the Hunger Games, which might make it more accessible to some, but if you do that, it's just going to be another battle royale knockoff. Who wants to see just another version of that, especially when, for a novel that's apparently made quite a big impact on people, you expect something more. But if at the same time, if they maybe just focus too much on the build-up and cut down on the Hunger Games portion, that's going to be even worse payoff because so much is leading to that point. So I just think the books are incredibly difficult to translate just based on what I've seen in the film. So, I figured still I'd see it anyway, as long as there was nothing else that was capturing my interest even more, but there wasn't, so I went and watched The Hunger Games 2, and I thought it was about as good as the first film, with a few additional strengths and a few additional weaknesses. It does more or less follow the same formula. The first half, which once again is about an hour and a half long, is all build-up. Probably too much time is spent building up this story, but at least it was a different kind of build-up. Whereas the first one, it was more about these kids being drawn into this situation, and we're just seeing the process of the Hunger Games and how they react to it. This one is much more about the world climate. Since the first film, this girl has become, a great hero to the people, and that really concerns the government. So there's a lot more fear of revolution, and there's something more epic, I think, about how everything goes down. And I think that's one of the things this film did better, is because you feel that there's a lot more on the line. That one wrong move from Katniss, she can get her entire sector wiped out, or she might accidentally start a revolution, and who knows where that will go. So that, I thought, made the first half more important than the first film did with its first half, and I liked that more. I also felt it was better paced. At no point was I ever bored, but at the same time, in retrospect, there are a lot of scenes that really weren't necessary, that they didn't really lead into much. Like, there's that one scene you see in the trailers where Philip Seymour Hoffman is talking to President Snow, who's played by Donald Sutherland, and he's saying we should kill her, but Philip Seymour Hoffman says no, let's turn the public against her. So they have this one scene where they establish that now the black market has been closed down. Now there's a lot more lynchings, but that really amounts to just one single scene, and that whole bit is dropped. I'm sure that the books expanded on that much more, but you don't really get that same feeling in the movie. You feel that they spent too much time setting up one scene when really neither of them were totally necessary, but at least the second scene they could have done without the first scene. But at the same time, Donald Sutherland is so awesome in this movie, and of course Philip Seymour Hoffman is always awesome, so I don't know, I wish that maybe that they just were able to expand that a bit more, but at the same time that would have meant the film would have been longer, or they would have had to cut out more. So I don't know, it's just part of, I feel, the difficulty of translating this from book to film. Once again, the same strengths of its predecessor really do resurface. It's all window dressing, but it's great window dressing. I love the costume designs, the set designs, the use of color. One thing about films these days is that they don't really have a whole lot of fun with the various colors. Usually, if anything, most even big budgeted visually laden films are rather dull when it comes to its color palette, but here you have like a lot of purple, a lot of green, and colors that you usually don't see mixed together in film just being used to their fullest. And I don't know, I love that. That's one of the things I really liked about Avatar, is I thought the use of colors in that movie was just fascinating, and I wish more films would take advantage of these vibrant colors and combining them to make just an odd but cool looking visual. So that wasn't a problem. I did feel the characters have become rather dull. Katniss was very interesting in the first film. Here, though, I feel that she's more of a conventional heroine. She doesn't really want to get involved in this. It's the whole thing. I think of Transformers 2 for some reason, where it's the whole "this isn't my fight." mentality, and I don't know, it's kind of old by now. I see that too much, and it seems like her development was very traditional, very conventional, not poorly executed, but at the same time, whereas I felt in the first film that character had more of an edge to her, which made her more interesting. But still, the actress did a great job, and so there's no problem there. I still find Peta, or is it Peter or Peta? I don't remember. I still find him to be incredibly boring. I don't know if he's more interested in the book or interesting in the book or not, but I don't know. I think the actor is fine. I've seen him in other stuff where I've liked him, but here he's kind of dull in comparison to everybody else. In fact, the love triangle is, in my opinion, the biggest weakness of this film. You have her, who you don't really understand why they like her, considering she doesn't really have much of a personality, and even Peta acknowledges that he doesn't know a whole lot about her, so it just comes across as lust being masqueraded as something deeper. The problem with most love stories is that. But then both of the love interests I found to be pretty boring too, at least with her and the other guy who's played by Liam Hemsworth, I believe. At least they have more of a history, so you could go ahead and see a relationship coming from that, but it seems like the movie is favoring her relationship with Peta, so that throws that whole point out of the window. Plus, the love triangle just feels so tacked on. I really do feel like they're trying to cash in on the Twilight craze. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the books, it wasn't as prominent, or at least they were able to do it in a way that felt more organic to the story. But here, I don't know, to me the whole thing felt unnecessary. The supporting characters, like the new additions, I really liked them though. I actually was kind of surprised at where various characters went in terms of their development, and the other winners who they had to compete against, I thought were really interesting. They had some surprising casting choices, but casting choices I could really get down with. I think his name's Jeffrey Wright. He's from the Bond movies. He played Felix. I liked him a lot. I liked the girl who's kind of a bitch, but she's a likable bitch, and that's a really difficult kind of persona to pull off. And there's a few others who I really bought into their plight. And I think one of the reasons that this movie worked really well is that the villains are thoroughly detestable. You have President Snow, and Donald Sutherland just plays him so well. He's incredibly smug, and you just love to hate this guy because he's totally evil, but he's sophisticated and even charming to an extent. He really steals every scene he's in. And Philip Seymour Hoffman, I thought he was actually a step down from what was his name? I think the character was named Seneca from the first movie. Wes Bentley, I believe, played him. I thought that character was more interesting than Philip Seymour Hoffman. In fact, Philip Seymour Hoffman is kind of bland in this film, which actually led me to correctly predicting where they were going to go with this character. But Philip Seymour Hoffman is entertaining enough to make up for it. It's just that the character himself was rather flat. But then even like minor villains, like there's this one guy who gets placed in charge of their sector who's just a total asshole, and you just want him to get his ass kicked. That really made you care for the characters, even if they themselves are not very interesting. And I like what they're doing with Elizabeth Banks' character. They're developing her. I heard that in the book that she's not really that prominent as she is in the films, and that she's kind of static, but in the films it seems like people liked the character from the first one so much that they're making her a little bit more sympathetic this time around, so I liked that. Now, one thing I really did appreciate about the second film is the action scenes are a lot better. I thought the second half of this one was much more effective than the first Hunger Games second half. It's for one, there's not as much shaky camera work. I could see all the action clearly. It seems like there was actually some choreography within the action too. Like when they take on these baboons, the baboons looked a little bit too CGI-ish, but I thought the fight scenes were actually still pretty intense, and I like how they'd had a lot more fun with the set. In the first film, it was just a jungle setting. I think. I could be wrong. Just a lot of trees and stuff like that. Well, this one, on the outside it looks the same, but they've rigged the place in so many areas that provided some really cool action set pieces that I could really get behind. And that's one of the main differences between this and the first one in terms of its execution. Whereas the first one was more about these people fighting each other. This one is more about them fighting the set, the location, the various traps that the organizers have set for them. Even though there's a few clashes between the various contestants, it's the focus has shifted. So I like that. And is there anything I could say that I haven't said? I don't think so. It's a good movie. I was pleased. I do feel that if the third film takes the same route, which I don't think it will become redundant, because this film definitely pushed that envelope a bit. I don't really know, because it's the same formula, but the execution is different enough that I didn't feel it was quite as monotonous as I feared it would be. But at the same time, if they continue to do that in the third film, it will become monotonous. But I don't think they will, based on the ending. And I guess that's one thing I'll stop this review on. The ending was weak. It ends on a cliffhanger. Now, cliffhangers aren't always bad. I actually really liked the cliffhanger in Pirates of the Caribbean 2. That just made me really excited to see the third one, which of course wasn't as good. But that's an example of a cliffhanger done right. Cliffhanger done wrong is The Matrix Reloaded, which just pissed me off, because it was like, is that it? Seriously? Then of course that led to the even much, much more disappointing Matrix Revolutions, and unfortunately this ending is more like that. Just like, okay, that's kind of anticlimactic, but what led to that at least was pretty good. So if you liked the first film, I definitely recommend you check this out in theaters. If you were indifferent to the first film but are open-minded to the idea of seeing a second film, I'd probably say just wait until DVD. But if you did not like the first film at all, this is probably not your cup of tea, and you should just go ahead and avoid it. So that's all I have to say. I already said that. I did not do a written review of this, but I did do written reviews of The Return to the 36th Chamber, which is a sequel to the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, a kung fu flick. The One with Jet Li. I'm about to post a written review of Vanishing on 7th Street, a thriller from the guy who directed The Machinist in Session 9. I haven't done too many written reviews lately. I did Second in Command with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and The Orphanage, which is a Spanish ghost film produced by Guillermo del Toro. So please read those. I'd appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter, and I am actually trying to get back on scripting, critiquing the critics. I cannot guarantee that I'll be able to come out with an episode before the end of the year, but I'll try. So that is that. I'll see you guys later.